today's episode, you're not only going to learn how to make these delicious rolls, but of course, you're going to learn a few food storage tricks along the way. In this episode, you can expect to learn how to add food storage to your favorite dough recipes, namely how to use powdered eggs in replacement of fresh eggs, and also how to add in a little bit of whole wheat so that your family doesn't notice you've done anything differently. Next, you're going to learn how to hydrate dehydrated apple slices, and you're also going to learn how to use that water instead of dumping it down the drain to add a flavor boost to a homemade sweetened condensed milk made from powdered milk. It's going to be amazing. So let's get started. Okay, now to get started on this dough, we're just going to start with adding in our warm water. Next, our yeast, so it can get all dissolved. And of course, if you want to know if your yeast is working, you wait a couple minutes and make sure that it's getting frothy and bubbling up. I know mine works, so I'm just going to skip to the next step, which is adding in sugar, because yeast loves to eat that sugar, and so it gets it going kind of faster. So this is the order I like to do it in. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in our powdered eggs. Now, when you are using powdered eggs, you want to make sure and not add in any extra water. This is the trick. When you're making bread and you're using powdered eggs, I'm going to repeat it. Don't add in any extra water. It makes your dough really soft. You can always add in a little bit of extra water at the end. Now, the next thing we're going to add in is our oil and our flour. Now, I used a mixture of bread flour and whole wheat flour. You can see my whole wheat flour right here. And I did about 1/3 whole wheat and 2/3 of the bread flour. Now, if you want your bread to all of a sudden go up a notch, all you have to do is start using bread flour. It is really that amazing, and it will really make a huge difference in any bread item you're making, rolls, cinnamon rolls, pizza dough. It makes it more elastic, gives it that nice texture, that chewy texture that we like. And lastly, I'm gonna add our salt on top so that it doesn't get in there with the yeast. That's it. Now I'm just gonna put on my lid, and I'm gonna go ahead and knead this for about 10 to 12 minutes on a medium speed. Now, once your bread gets going, the way you know you have enough flour is that it's clearing the bowl. So it's not sticking to the bowl, and it's also not too hard. Now I'm gonna stop this for a second just so you can see. But I always say that the texture of dough should be sort of like baby cheeks, and that's how you know when it's soft enough. So we're gonna go ahead and put that back in. I'm gonna leave the top lid off so that it gets a little air while it's kneading, and then go ahead and keep kneading it for the rest of that 12 minutes. Okay, now while your dough is kneading, this is a perfect time to get your filling ready, and the filling is easy. We're gonna use those dehydrated apple slices from the LDS Home Storage Center that we talked about earlier. We're just gonna put them in a bowl with some warm water and let them hydrate a little bit while our dough is kneading and while we make the rest of our filling. So we're gonna move that off to the side, and now we're going to make our filling. Now for the filling, I just did butter and about a 1/3 cup of butter, a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and a 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. Now this is the secret nobody wants to tell you for really good cinnamon rolls or sweet rolls, is that powdered sugar helps everything sort of stay together. It's got a little bit of cornstarch in it, so it's a great little secret to not having all your filling just seep to the bottom of your pan. Then we're gonna add in our spices, which is cinnamon, allspice, and nutmeg, and of course some butter. Now I like to go ahead and mix these together before I put it on my bread, because then I know everything's getting equal. So I'm having equal flavor, and I know that I'm not having too much butter in one spot and too much sugar in another. So to me, this is another secret tip for making really good cinnamon rolls or other filling sweet rolls. To get your filling all mixed together and then put it on top of your dough. Okay, now as you can see, that came together quite quickly. It's still going to be very spreadable on top of our dough, but this way we're making sure it has equal taste all throughout our rolls. And the smell is already totally amazing. It smells like an apple pie just waiting to happen. So good. Okay, now on to the next step. Okay, so it's been a few minutes, and as you can see, our apples are already totally hydrated. And we don't want them super hydrated because they're gonna hydrate even more in the rolls. So you just wanna get them to where they're soft. You should be able to bend them. They should be pliable. And I'm gonna go ahead and empty them out onto a paper towel. I'm gonna do that because I just wanna drain off that excess liquid that's sort of sitting on top of the apples, because obviously when I mix them into my filling with butter, oil and water don't mix, or fat and water also don't mix. And so we wanna try and get rid of some of that excess water before we add it to our filling. Now, the other tip is we don't want to ever be wasteful with food storage and our water, especially if we're hydrating something. We always want to try and use that water somewhere else. Number one, because look at all that great flavor. That's all apple flavor sitting in there. But also because we just don't want to be wasteful. So I'm going to go ahead and save this water and use it for my homemade sweetened condensed milk that we're going to use for the caramel on top of these rolls, and it's going to be delicious. Okay, now you may want to take a paper towel and sort of dab the tops of these dehydrated apple slices. And then we're just gonna go ahead and add them to our filling here, because it's just easier. We're gonna spread it all at once, make one mess here in this bowl. Oops, let's pick up all these guys. Made their way out. And we're just gonna stir it around with our filling. This is gonna be our apple kind of pie filling for our apple rolls. So our filling is all ready. My dough is almost done kneading. And then we'll get to that last and final step, which is making our rolls and then our caramel topping. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes that it's been kneading. And I just wanted to show you the dough, because your dough should look very soft, very pliable. Again, it should feel like those baby cheeks, like these down here. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this dough rest. It's gotta take a nap for about another 10 minutes. And so we're just gonna put the lid on, thank you. And put this in a warmish spot. So for me in Arizona, that means my garage. If you are somewhere where you actually get a fall, it might be by a nice roaring fire or someplace that is warm, maybe in your laundry room where your dryer's going, something like that. While the dough is resting, it's a perfect time to make our sweetened condensed milk from food storage. Now, if you want to see another video on this, you can check out my coconut macaroons. But for this one, we're going to go ahead and use that water that I used to hydrate the apples, so that way we're going to get a little more apple flavor. Again, another way you can't get from doing something at the store. This is adding an extra boost of flavor. We're going to add in a cup of sugar and a cup of powdered milk, and a tablespoon or so of butter. Now, before you freak out about the sugar, it is sweetened condensed milk. That's just the awful truth of it. Okay, so go ahead and put it in your blender and then blend it on high for about 30 seconds to 1 minute until it's blended all the way through. Okay, so it's done blending, and I wanted you to see just how beautiful and sweetened condensed milk like it is. Look at that beautiful pour, and dare I say, it even sort of smells like apples. It's the coolest thing. Okay, so here's our sweetened condensed milk. We're all ready to go to make our caramel topping for our rolls while our rolls are in the oven. Now it's time to go ahead and check on your dough that's been resting for the last 10 minutes. Okay, so the dough has risen in its nice happy place. It's bigger, as you can see. And so now it's time to go ahead and roll it out. Now look at this dough. It is completely stretchy. It's super soft. I can't get over this enough. Your dough should feel very soft. It should feel like, what? Baby's cheeks. Okay, now let's go ahead and put this down and roll it out. Now I like to use a silicone mat like this because it gives me a nice visual of where I should be rolling. Go ahead and put your dough in the middle and then just go ahead and roll it out from side to side. Also, silicone makes it really easy because you can move it around and you don't have to grease or flour your counters, so it's an easy cleanup, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and get the rest of this rolled out, and then we'll put on our filling. So my dough is rolled out into a nice perfect rectangle, and so now we're gonna go ahead and put on our delicious filling. Just go ahead and pour it on top and smooth it over the entire top of your dough. It seriously doesn't get easier than this. Go ahead and smooth it out as evenly as you can. Out to the edges. You don't want those end rolls to have nothing in them. That's the worst, right? It's the worst. Okay, so go ahead and roll it out. And then we're gonna roll this up like you would cinnamon rolls from the long edge over and around. We wanna make sure we don't wanna miss any of this delicious filling left on the spoon. That'd be wasteful. Okay, so go ahead and take it and roll it up as tightly as you can. And it's gonna be kind of hard because you have those apple chunks, so you might want to pick it up a little bit. Now with the silicone, I just kind of turn it this way, and then it's super easy to go ahead and pinch those sides on the other end to close it up. Now to cut our rolls, you can use something like floss or a really sharp knife. I've found because this has those apple slices in it, a sharp knife is the best way to go. Now, as long as you're nice and careful, you can actually use a sharp knife on your silicone mat. Just make sure you don't cut all the way through it. Now, I like to start by cutting it in half. So there's a nice half cut, and then into quarters. Then we're gonna cut those quarters into thirds, and that's gonna give us 12. So do it about an inch thick, kind of scrunch them back up so they're the right shape. Okay, now the other nice thing about using a silicone mat is we're just going to go ahead and lay them out on our mat, and then we're going to put them onto our baking sheet. Oops. But you can see the fillings coming out of, like, it's just so good. You can take a little bit, add it to a different one, whatever you want. Silicone mat keeps everything from sticking, so you don't have to worry about a mess later on. And boom, we're done. Now I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my oven to 350 degrees. These are gonna rise while it's preheating, and then it's gonna be time to bake them. Okay, so my oven's preheated to 350, so it's time to put these delicious rolls in the oven to bake. Now, I'm gonna bake them for about 15 minutes because I'm baking them on a cookie sheet where there's lots of room in between. If you're putting them in a glass 9x13 pan, you might wanna bake them a little bit longer. Now, while our rolls are in the oven, we're gonna go ahead and start our caramel toppings. You're gonna wanna put a medium-sized pot on about a medium to high heat. You're going to add in, your butter. We're gonna let that melt, and then we're also gonna add in our sugar. Now, I'm gonna use my brown sugar trick, and if you wanna learn more about that, you can head on over and watch my video on making the apple oatmeal muffins. But basically, you're just gonna use the same amount of white sugar and a tablespoon of molasses for every cup of brown sugar that you are using. And since this is gonna be a nice and easy thing we're gonna mix together, it's going to be a great time to do that. Now the last thing we have to add in is about a tablespoon or 2 of corn syrup. Now don't freak out. Corn syrup has its place, and in this case, it's going to keep our topping from getting gritty. It's gonna help all those crystals align in the right way. No pun intended. Now just go ahead and give this a good stir until it's combined and until the sugar is well dissolved into your melted butter. Okay, now as you can see, our butter sugar mixture is dissolved and it's been boiling for a couple minutes. It's turning that beautiful caramel color. So now we're just gonna go ahead and pour in our apple infused sweetened condensed milk that we made from our food storage. Get it all in there. Then we're gonna stir to combine and let it cook for another 2 to 3 minutes. Look at how delicious that's turning. Oh, it's gonna be great on our rolls. Okay, so it's been a couple minutes and I'm just gonna turn the heat off and go ahead and just let it sit for a minute to kind of cool down. And we have 1.5 minutes left on our rolls, so this is perfect timing. Okay, so the timer just went off and it's time to pull out these rolls. Okay, so we're to our final step, just putting on this delicious caramel drizzle, and then these rolls are delicious. Now I want you to take note how big and beautiful they got in the oven. They are so good and they don't take that much time. Now we're just gonna drizzle this caramel topping on top. Now I went ahead and I moved it into a more pourable, liquid measuring so that I could pour it easier. But look how easy this is. It's so good. This is seriously such a good way to impress your friends, and no one's ever gonna notice or guess that you used a ton of food storage in these. Oh man, these just look so good. Now, to finish it off after the caramel's been put on, we're going to sprinkle some diced nuts on top. Now, you don't have to do this, but my family likes pecans. Pecans go great with caramel apples and everything fall. So we might as well just take this up one more notch. Oh, so good. I wish you were here. I wish I could give you one of these. You'll just have to make it yourself, but they are so good. Okay. So now it's the moment of truth. Time to put one onto a plate. Okay, it's the moment of truth, and it's the time when I get to try this. Oh, like I said, I wish you guys could be here. We're just gonna take a quick bite here. But you can see the filling is full of beautiful apples and that kind of apple pie filling. It's going to be so good. Now, the thing I love best about these rolls is that dough is really soft and everything just sort of melts together in your mouth. Plus that caramel is nice and sticky, just like on a caramel apple. So it is gonna blow your friends' minds. It's going to blow your minds. Now, in this episode, we learned how to sneak some food storage ingredients into the dough, namely whole wheat and powdered eggs. We also learned how to use that water from hydrating our dehydrated apples to add a flavor boost to our homemade sweetened condensed milk using powdered milk. And we learned how to do it all in about 30 minutes. Now, if you have a favorite recipe or you have something you want me to try, make sure you leave it in the comments below, and make sure you come back next week for another episode of Everyday Food Storage, where I help you learn how to use food storage in your very own recipes. Until next time.